Hey pal, what's with the fluorescent fur? Here's your spooky spot in NECA Toys retro glow-in-the-dark, the Wolfman. Collect the whole creepy crew of Universal Film monsters, all posable and ready for action. Classic toy and classic horror fans alike will enjoy these loving modern tributes that draw inspiration from the 1980s Universal famous mini monster toy collection, combining retro toys with NECA's likeness sculpts. These 7-inch scale figures also glow in the dark. Hey, what's the matter with Wolfie? I can hear him barking. Before we get a closer look at the retro glow-in-the-dark, the Wolfman, I'd like to thank the folks over at NECA. How nice they were to actually send over not only the retro glow-in-the-dark Wolfman, but also the Mummy and Frankenstein's monster that we have looked at in 2 separate scary reviews. Resuming where we left off with theater here, we're going to take the tape measure right to the very top. I'm going to start with inches. Right to the very top of Wolfman's head, the figure stands about 7 inches in height, or he's about 18 centimeters tall. Gotta get in those other glow-in-the-dark figures. So here's what glow-in-the-dark Wolfman looks like with glow-in-the-dark Frankenstein's monster. I believe you two have already met. Here's also what he looks like next to the glow-in-the-dark Mummy. And why I'm putting them to the back like this is obviously you guys will want to also see what they look like. Here's what the colorized version of Wolfman, and here's the black and white version of Wolfman look like with the retro glow-in-the-dark Wolfman. That's a bit of a mouthful. You can see there's a lot of departure here happening with color. The glow-in-the-dark retro Wolfman, for example, does away completely with the idea of furry brown or furry gray. Instead, has more of a flesh-toned face and some really interesting-looking hair. BTW, here's the packaging that came included with Wolfman. Once again, it's using very thick cardboard cards, so this would be ideal for hanging on the wall had I not actually taken the time to open these. I'm going to definitely want to pick up another set of these. Everything here is actually based on the original Remco line from the 80s. These glow-in-the-dark figures were those slightly smaller. They actually match the color really nicely here with the 7-inch variety. Also, one thing that's different, other than really the packaging being identical, even like the starburst glowing effect that actually had the figure contained inside the bubble prison, down below here would have actually had Remco contained inside that oval. NECA has also obviously removed away the Remco and instead put NECA in there. Everything else really is identical to the original packaging. Love the idea that they did that. Wolfman also does come included with one other accessory. He's the exception to the rule as he comes included with his display stand. In both the cases before, the black and white and the colored version of Wolfman also came included with this little small circular stand. And what is this for? Well, actually, based on the suit itself, Wolfman had these flat feet because he kind of was more of an arch like this. The feet were kind of arched back, so it did leave a little bit of a gap space. Wolfman doesn't actually sit flat on a shelf. He sits flat here, but the back of his ankle actually lifts up a little bit more in an angle. So to rectify that, they've actually put holes on the bottoms of his feet. And they have included this peg stand. The stand then allows you to actually have his feet slightly more arched back like this, as if he's kind of walking or stalking his prey in the woods. I like it, but it just means, though, when you are using it without the display stand, like I did at the beginning of this video, you really have to have him leaning forward on his feet for the risk of course, what he almost ended up doing, tumbling backwards. That's the only accessories that come included with the figure. It does actually one better than the original Remco Wolfman. Had the same color scheme. The original Wolfman didn't come included with a stand for obvious reasons. Getting, though, a closer look now at Wolfman. Of the 3 we've now looked at, I can safely say, 100% confidently say, that Wolfman is my favorite. I love the color scheme on this one. It does take, yes, a very drastic departure from, here's like the colorized version of Wolfman, for example. His nose obviously isn't painted black. It kind of actually looks like a human face. I think I had actually relatives that looked a little like this. Full beard that went right into their hair. Very awkward relatives. I never liked to have them come. They always made really interesting sandwiches, but they were always really creepy to look at. There was a couple of them actually looked like this. What kind of relatives do I have? But anyways, though, getting a closer look, I mean, to compare the two, it's almost like night and day. It is, I mean, really, when you're looking at the coloring of the costume, for example, the coloring of this one obviously had the more olive green shirt. And then, of course, the lower pants were more of a beige color. Consistently, it seems like he's brown. He's muddy from the top and he's muddy from the bottom. This guy's been rolling around in all of it. The detailing, though, on both the figures is exactly the same. So they would have not had to retool anything between the two figures. And even them both actually feature the exact same hands and the exact same feet. I don't know, like I said, I would do away with getting this one or the black and white, because either one of them actually more resembles the way the Wolfman looks like on the silver screen. If you really want to be a purist, get then the black and white. But I can obviously see why people chose to get both the color version and the black and white. But I really like the fun of this guy. In fact, my memory isn't as good as it used to be, but I remember at some point when I was a kid, I may have had something like this I got at a garage sale. It was probably like a bendy figure, for example, so obviously the articulation wasn't, I don't even think it was really the Remco one. It was probably like a bendy Wolfman, but he had a very similar color scheme to this. It was a weird color scheme choice, but it actually has even more of a retro look to it than both the Frankenstein and the Mummy we looked at before. I just love the head sculpt on this one. Oh, those sandwiches were delicious, but that one uncle that came over, literally, he never had a mustache. I always thought it was strange. Like, if you're going to commit this much to a beard, it goes all the way into his hair. Okay, maybe this one's a little bit more generous on the hair than my uncle, but he probably should have finished the job at least by adding a mustache. Not that it would make him less creepy. It probably would make him a little less creepy. This one also has some neat blood that they've also added to the bottom of his lip. You can see it trickles down. Now, neither one, really, I'm going to bring back in the color, the black and white version of the Wolfman, neither of them actually did have the blood trickling down. What's rather interesting, though, is while the fur goes all the way up to the bottom of his lip, this one doesn't have it. It just cuts it straight across. It's actually very similar to what we got with the Frankenstein's monster, where if you remember, Frankenstein's monster had the paint covering and completely painting the top of his hair. Wolfman kind of does it from the bottom, at least. I like that little bit of blood. Not only does it pop that color on the front of the face, it brings a nice little necessary bit of red to it, because if not for that, there's a lot of really dark, muddy colors that they've used for both the hair, the costume, of course, and then all the fur in between. For the articulation on this guy, it's going to be exactly the same as the Wolfman we looked at before. One last time to look at his beady little eyes. I feel like he's staring right at me. Okay, let's cut quickly to articulation. Head rotates all the way around, and while rotating that, you may have also noticed I'm rotating the neck in the process. He does actually have 2 points of articulation. This part right here rotates on its own, but then the neck is also on a ball joint. Now, it still falls off a little too frequently. If you rotate the neck too aggressively, I don't know how aggressive you rotate your figure's necks, but if you rotate it too aggressively, periodically I've noticed it pops the neck out. I mean, it's easy to replace. The human face, of course, would have been included with both the color and the black and white. This one doesn't have it. Just pop it back into place. That's all you really need to do. Shoulders do come out, and of course you can take those arms and rotate them all the way around. Figure does have a hinge, that wasn't necessary. Figure has a hinge in his elbow that allows the form to rotate back and forth, and the hands also, as furry as they may be, rotate all the way around as well. He has an upper torso ball joint, like the original figures we looked at earlier, and the figure, of course, does have those ball joints in his knees, or in his thighs. Can you see those ball joints? I hope you can. This is as close as I really do want to get to a werewolf. And then, of course, the legs go forward and they go back. There's a slight swivel at the top of the thigh. Single hinge, again, only on the knee. Rotate on the lower leg. The feet themselves, keeping in mind, again, you could pop these off. You can rotate the feet back and forth, ankle pivot back and forth this way, and you can also ankle rock it as well. Yeah, you know, between the 3 figures we've looked at, I gotta say, like, Wolfman is by far my favorite. Perhaps some of it may have some biased approach, simply just because I think I had a toy like this when I was growing up. It's kind of strange, really, because I wasn't really into monsters that much as a kid, and yet my parents allowed me to get something like that at a garage sale. I don't think any nightmares followed after that. But I remember having something similar to this. Maybe even it was the Remco original Wolfman. If that was the case, man, I really wish I hadn't sold it or given away or gotten rid of it or whatever ended up being the fate of that Wolfman, because it would have been nice to be able to bring him back, probably scuffed up and paint all chipped off, be able at least to compare it with the one that we get here from NECA. NECA's obviously still paying tribute to the original 80s Remco line, does things a whole lot nicer. Obviously, the one thing also about this figure is the fact that he does have the glow-in-the-dark features. Now, obviously, I have just brought these 2 figures in right now to do comparisons, but obviously, as I keep saying, obviously, we're going to move these 2 figures out of the way, and we're going to reach off to the side going to grab the black light. I know for a second I almost thought I was going to forget about this. Running the black-white light across his face is the only part that actually glows in the dark on the Wolfman. It makes things even stranger, the fact that his fur is colored in brown, both the top and his bottom beard there, and it's only really his face that glows in the green. Now, to do this again, we're going to go ahead and cut the lights so you can see exactly what Wolfman looks like in the dark. Oh! Yes, as we've done 2 times before, I'm going to go ahead and grab my black light here and shine it in front of the face of Wolfman. Now, generally, though, I don't think you'd be shining anything like this in front of a wild animal, whether he's a wolfman or not. What's rather interesting, though, is nowhere else on the figure's body, even on the rest of his hair, glows, so it's really only strangely glowing here on his face. There are a few little particles you may or may not be able to see actually on his fur that do actually have little flecks of glowing. I mean, even it kind of looks like he's got wolfman dandruff. I guess that would still be a problem. But you can definitely see it's only really here on the face. And once again, I'm going to move the black light away. Results, once again, may vary the longer you have this sitting in front of a lamplight. Lamplight, I think, does the better job of absorbing the light than a black light does. But the black light at least benefits to show you guys just how bright the face can actually glow. Trying to tap into what's left of my fleeting memory. It happens to all of us as we get a little bit older. You know, I think I actually did have the Remco Wolfman. It is not something, of course, that was bought brand new. There's no way my parents would have ever bought a Wolfman for me in stores, and yet they seem to have no problem whatsoever buying it for me at a garage sale. Probably the price of what this thing I picked up for was maybe like 25 cents, 50 cents. I don't even remember what the price was, but I remember having Wolfman in my collection for a while. Took it to school a couple of times. A couple of the girls in the class that I had a crush on were shrieking. I want to say in delight, but they were shrieking probably in terror the fact I was bringing out this Wolfman figure. And then after that, its whereabouts went unknown. Either I just forgot what ended up happening to it, or maybe one of the kids in the class ended up taking the Wolfman. But either way, though, what we get now is a scaled-up version of the original Remco 80s line. What we get here, though, is a better sculpt, and we get much improved articulation. That really wasn't benefiting that toy line back in the day. They were much more simplified-looking figures for obvious reasons, but they did have glow-in-the-dark, and that's been carried over nicely here with this new line from NECA Toys. Of the 3, though, I prefer the Wolfman. Now, most of that may just have some biased opinion based on the fact I had the original Wolfman as a kid growing up. Between, though, the Wolfman, the Frankenstein's monster, and the Mummy, I think the Wolfman does things the most fun, if that makes any sense. He lacks some of the paint that the original Wolfman toys that we've got from NECA had, like the coloring in his nose is completely gone, and even like the fur on the bottom of his chin isn't going all the way up to the bottom of his lip. But what they have done instead, that the other 2 Wolfman can't say that they have, is blood trickling out of the mouth, which I don't think, maybe the original Wolfman did have even blood, and they just replicated that nicely in a scaled up figure. Of the 3, like I said, my favorite is the Wolfman. What is your favorite of the 3 figures that we've looked at from the Remco-inspired glow-in-the-dark retro figures? Also, once again, a big thank you to the folks over at NECA Toys that did provide this sample of the retro glow-in-the-dark Wolfman that we can have a look at in this video. If you guys enjoyed this video, why not hit it with a like? If you're loving the content you're seeing, and certainly you want to scream and stick around for more, then make sure, yes, you hit that subscribe button down below and turn on the bell notification, because while we have finished up things for Wolfman, there's definitely going to still be some spooky spots coming your way during the month of Spottober. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.